We want to make sure we're recording it so we can share it wider. All right. All right. And JALYSSA, do you want to just say anything else about yourself?
No, that's who I am. There's a variety of countries that we will go over that if you have any questions about, or we can talk more about that later, but there's lots of options for everybody out there. So feel free to ask any questions as you go through, and Owen and I can help from a volunteer coordinator perspective. But yeah, anything you have, just feel free to ask.
JALYSSA is based in the Kitchener-Waterloo region. So it's another reason why it's lovely for us to do these online sessions is we can get all of our staff from across the country to be part of the session. So, and we have Owen.
Yeah, hey guys. Yeah, we kind of introduced ourselves already, but I just wanted to add to what I'd said earlier. I've done a couple of gap years, I guess. I did one when I was 18, and I feel really passionately about sort of getting the word out that they are quite legitimate opportunities, and it's not just people disappearing off into the ether and not coming back. They are really, really valuable, and so I come at it from that end. And like I said, I've been working with Lattitude for a number of years, both in Canada and New Zealand, but traveled and lived in other countries as well, so kind of understand that piece to it too. So yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you. And Katrina, just if you could give a quick intro of where you went and what you're doing now, and maybe tell us a little bit about the photo.
Yeah, for sure. So I was in China. I was a language coach. I was placed in a city just outside of Shanghai, so that was super cool. The people in the picture, the lady, her name is Kelly. She is the, what do you guys call them? The country coordinator, she was the country coordinator for China at the time. That's her husband and that's her daughter. They were very nice, and they hosted me for the last stint of my time there, and I worked with their daughter teaching her English, so that was a good time. I am now in my third year of university. I'm also based in Ontario, like JALYSSA. I'm actually in the Kitchener-Waterloo area as well for school. I go to Laurier. So, yeah.
Wonderful. You're one of those fine examples of a student who goes in a gap year and then comes back and does something great for post-secondary. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I'll put you on the spot a bit later about your post-secondary experience.
Sure.
So, what is a gap year? We talk about our program as being a gap year program. And so I'd just like to give you a little bit more background on what a gap year actually means. This is an official definition. There's many definitions out there, but it is typically looked at as that year after high school, but before career, post-secondary, or whatnot, and a chance to go and deepen your personal development, your career development, just do something a little bit different. The focus of the year is, it's not about it being a year off, it's about it being a year on. It's a year with intention and purpose, a chance to learn and just step out of that comfort zone for a little while and do something different. And that can be done through any combination of things. A lot of people choose to do things like volunteer and travel or work or just pursue their interests. And so with Lattitude, we are able to combine a couple of those things, the travel and adventure, along with the volunteer aspect to get some work experience. So as for who is Lattitude, so we've been around for a really long time. We are a global nonprofit organization that was actually founded in the UK in 1972. The idea of a gap year goes back even further than that, in the 60s. Sorry for the history lesson, but we like to share with you that we are in fact the original gap year organization. So we've been doing this for a long time. We were the ones who really defined a lot of what a gap year should look like around intention and around purpose. And we provide structured gap year experiences. So we were sort of the first organization out there to do that. Of course, we've gone through a rebranding. We used to be called Gap Activity Projects. We really did coin the term gap year in a lot of ways. We've evolved over the years. Our programs, they do last between 3 to 12 months, but we do have some shorter term action projects we will talk about later. We send to 15 countries around the world, various volunteer roles. And also just want to point out that you're eligible until you're 25. So while a gap year is traditionally that year after high school, it doesn't have to be that time. It can always be a little bit later. In fact, it's getting increasingly more popular for students to go later as well. So there's various reasons why a student would choose to do a gap year. So we're going to talk about some of the benefits of taking a gap year. When we have talked to students and asked them, what are your reasons for taking a gap year? Oftentimes they want to just take a break to gain experience and some personal growth, take a break from the academic track for a little while, explore a career, or maybe it's a plan B. Maybe they didn't get into the program that they wanted to and they realize that they've got to expand their portfolio a little bit before the next step. So there's various reasons, and there's a lot of wonderful, valuable benefits to taking a gap year. And the biggest one, some of the biggest ones is around personal development. Having a chance to go and expand your perspective, live in somebody else's shoes for a little while, open your mind up to new things, but also just build some of those life skills like confidence and decision-making skills, independence and whatnot. Preparing for your future, so career development. Sometimes taking that step away from the formal track of education gives you that chance to just breathe and reflect on what you've learned so far and get ready for the next step in career and gaining experience. So with Lattitude, having a chance to actually work as a volunteer, you're going to gain some real world experience, in addition to having that break and that pause and that breather away from formal study for a little while. Relationship building, a chance to meet new people you'd never meet otherwise. I hear all the time, Katrina, I'm sure you'll be able to tell us as well about the people that you met. I'll ask you after I've gone through these slides to tell us about some of the things that you gained, but those lifelong friendships with people from right around the world. Us being a global organization, we send volunteers from right around the world, sending you to 15 destinations. There's just endless chances to make friendships, but also taking on adult responsibilities in the workplace gives you a chance to work on those communication skills as well as a member of a professional staff. And lending a helping hand. This is really the core of what we do as a volunteer organization, allowing young people to go and make a real difference. We work with our partners. We ensure that our partners are telling us what they want volunteers to do. They are genuinely excited to have volunteers in their mix, and they're the ones determining what the volunteer role is. So we know that volunteers are going and doing meaningful work that's actually wanted by the community. They can go make a contribution, and by being there for a longer chunk of time, they really do have the opportunity to make a difference. And cultural awareness, being immersed in a new culture, living in one place for a while, gives you that real opportunity to change your perspective, to not just be a tourist, but to see the world as the way that the locals do and do the things that the locals do, and find a second home somewhere in the world. Perhaps it's an opportunity to develop new language skills. We have some great opportunities for that as well. And just a chance as well to understand some global issues, which can often as well help that career development piece of it. Understanding the world is going to help you make those decisions. And just getting out of your comfort zone a little bit. You've all heard the cliches that the magic happens outside of the comfort zone. You can't learn by staying within it. So here's a chance to go get out there, leave behind all those things that you rely on for a while and make new friends, get comfortable in new surroundings, and become a local somewhere else. There's no other way to learn outside of doing this really uncomfortable experience. Of course, you're going to have a great time, but it's overcoming a lot of those challenges where the real magical learning happens. So before actually we jump into the why Lattitude, maybe KATRINA, if you can unmute yourself, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to just tell us about some of the things that you gained. Maybe some of the things that we went over in those slides resonates with you a little bit. Is there anything you'd like to share?
I think with the getting out of your comfort zone, that's definitely a big one, because I think when a lot of people apply for things like these, you don't necessarily even like, you can listen to like information sessions and you can read things online and you can do all you want. Like you could even listen to like people who've done it before, but like in the end, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. So I do think it's taking that kind of trust in both who you are and in the company and in what you're doing to know that like, yeah, I'm not going to be comfortable with this, but this is something worth doing for both myself and for the community. And I think that was a really big reason why I did it personally. Like when I graduated high school, I had already applied to university and I had deferred my acceptance. So I knew I was going to come back and do something school-wise. And not everyone does that, and that's fine. But I just chose to do it that way. But I did find it was a lot of like pushing myself, but also pushing myself in a way that like made an impact on other people beyond like just schooling. I find we spend our entire lives in school for so long that it's just become like a linear progression, but not everything has to be linear. Mm-hmm. And I think if we could get more people to understand that, that'd be kind of cool too. But definitely the get out of your comfort zone and the cultural awareness and like really immersing yourself into something different, because you'll never know if you don't try.
Absolutely. I think that's the thing that we're really trying to do, is shift that culture and have students realize like it's okay to take a pause. And there's a lot of research out there that we won't go over today, but just on how it can really benefit you to not follow a linear track.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
So moving along now, a little bit more about Lattitude. And you know, we know that taking a gap year is a very valuable thing to do, but we want you to think about why Lattitude. So one of the things I mentioned earlier is that we are approaching 50 years of history. We've been around since 1972. And in our history, we've sent close to 50,000 young adults overseas to volunteer. We're really proud of that. I think it's really awesome. We've learned a thing or two about how to do this. And like I said as well, we were really a big part in defining what a gap year should even look like. We do believe that we provide transformative experiences for our youth, and that we make sure that they're doing valuable work by working closely with our partners in where we send our volunteers to. Our focus is youth development. So what that means is that we're centered on creating those transformative experiences for our youth. We want you to go and have an experience where you're going to grow and learn and have an adventure of a lifetime. And so what we do to do this is we get to know you. We want to know who you are, what kind of experiences you've had, what your talents are, and what you hope to get out of this experience. And then on the other side of that, we're finding out from our hosts, what do they want for our volunteers to do? What do they hope for? And then we make a good match. We provide that structure and support before you go, during your placements, and when you get back as well, to ensure that that experience really is transformative as well. So a little bit more about the support that we will give our volunteers. A lot of it happens before you go. So right when you apply, you'll be contacted by our team for an interview. Every applicant is guaranteed an interview. So you'll be interviewed perhaps with somebody local to you, or it might be your volunteer coordinator in the end. Could be somebody in Canada or somebody from one of our other sending offices. I don't think I mentioned earlier where all the sending offices are, but you might end up in conversation with somebody in Canada, the UK, Australia, or New Zealand for that first interview. We really want to get to know you, like I mentioned, your experiences and also what you hope to get out of the experience. It's a very non-competitive way of doing it. It's really so we can get to know you, make that match. Then you're going to meet with the country manager. So this is, we talked about Pia, who's in the room here, as a country manager for Canada. So she interviews everybody who wants to come and volunteer in Canada. There is a Pia in every country that we send our volunteers, who will be that one to do the interview and get to know you, because they also know the placements and they'll be the ones to make the match. So placement matching is really a service that we provide for both volunteers and hosts to make sure that it's a positive experience for everybody. And then the volunteer coordinator, this is the person that's going to help you with all the pre-trip preparations. So while we ask you to do things, we're going to guide you. So how do you book your flight and when should you do it? How do you apply for a visa to enter the country? And all the various other bits and pieces that you need to know. We also provide a number of digital briefing packs that are loaded with valuable information. And we arrange pre-departure briefings, which are either in person or online, depending on where you're located. But the goal of those pre-departures is to really get you ready to go and get you thinking about all the right things, and also for you to get to know fellow volunteers and staff that will be supporting you. Once you arrive on placement, we continue to support you. It begins right at the airport. We'll come pick you up and take you to the orientation. The orientation may last anywhere from a couple days to a couple weeks. And it just depends on the nature of the orientation. Some of them will include some training. That might be a language skills or some teaching skills. But either way, the orientations are a chance for you to just get some practical things. You may be setting up bank accounts and whatnot. You might, you'll certainly be reviewing expectations, anything that's country specific about where you're at. There'll be some sightseeing, some team building, a variety of fun activities. We've actually been posting a fair bit about orientations for volunteers that have just arrived in country, a lot of places around the world. So be sure to check our social media feeds to see some of the photos and what's been happening around the world with orientation. Country managers, oops, sorry, didn't mean to scroll. Country managers and local reps are there to support you while you're in country as well. So these are staff members that live in the countries that you're going to. So the country manager might have some local reps that they work with to help them cover the geographic spread of wherever you're going. But they're the Lattitude staff member who's going to be part of the orientation, but also will come and visit you on placement. And then over and above that, there's 24/7 emergency support. So in the case of something that happens, we will be there for you. We work closely with embassies and high commissions to ensure that we've got really up-to-date advice on issues as well that might affect your safety and whatnot. And then your host organization is in agreement with us to provide for you while you're on your placement. And some of that includes accommodation and food for the duration of the placement. And also mentorship and support while you're on the placement. So we want to make sure that you have somebody who actually is there to look after you and help orient you to the day-to-day on the job. And where possible, so in developed countries, in most cases, there will also be a weekly allowance provided. And this does vary, and it's at the discretion of the host, but it's something that you'll have a chance to learn about whether or not you can expect to receive that where you're going. All right, and then support upon return. So we know that when you get back, there's a bit of a transitional stage as well. And we also just love hearing from our return volunteers. We love having them involved, like you, Katrina. It's great that we get to continue to engage you. So we have a variety of events that we will invite alumni to. There's opportunity to debrief. And we have what we call our alumni network, which just is a chance to sort of meet each other and stay involved. We also do an annual competition. We haven't done ours for this year yet, but to collect photos and essays and videos so you can really celebrate your experiences abroad. Of course, we're also happy to write references for you that you might need for college or university applications and things like that. There's a variety of ways that we hope to support you on your transition back home. All right, All right, so you're probably wondering where are you going to go? Well, some of you already know where you're going to go, and some of you are contemplating where you might go. So I just wanted to review with you the different options. I will be, when we get off the call, I will be emailing you with a digital copy of our detailed brochure, so you can see sort of a summary of a lot of the things that we're talking about, if you're not scribbling down notes really quickly. But you'll notice that we group our experiences in two ways. It's either what we call country immersion programs or action projects. So country immersion programs are where you're in the same place doing the same thing for anywhere between 3 and 12 months. So this is a really great way to have that immersive experience where you really get stuck in one place, become like a local, and get to make that fine difference there in one place. Action projects are a little bit different. There's actually a few different types as well, but we just sort of gave them all one title. Project Europe is the longest. It's a 5-month experience, but it's different from our country immersion because here you're going to be going to 4 different countries. So we're still finalizing which countries for sure for 2021. But just for an example, this year it's including the UK, Poland, Spain, and Germany. But basically, it's a chance for you to try out a few different volunteer experiences over the course of your experience. And then the Greece Action Project and the Ghana Action Project are some shorter term experiences as well that range from 2 to 12 weeks. I'll talk about them a little bit more later on. But it's we realize that not everybody can commit to 3 months or more in one place, and we want you to still have a great experience. So there's some other options available to you. All right, so here's the world. So just going to quickly share with you where you can go. I'm guessing a lot of you already know this, and you've already probably visited our website a little bit. But we'll just sort of quickly go through the map and where you can go, so we can get into the work types and logistics moving forward. But yeah, so we've got Argentina. I don't know if this is a good time, JALYSSA and OWEN, for you to jump in and just say anything about the countries that we might need to know about, like vacancies, or like I know there's some places that are already filling up for 2020, 2021, and whatnot. But feel free to jump in as we review the map if there's anything that comes to you. Argentina is fantastic, fascinating country. I love it there. You'll definitely want to have a bit of Spanish when you go there. We'll review what the different work types that are available in every country momentarily. I believe we're working alphabetically. So next would be Australia. Some wonderful opportunities there. We also, Australia is one of Lattitude's sending countries. So there's been a lot of wonderful programs being developed there. Lots of support. Canada. I know that we don't necessarily have Canada advertised on our website because we are the Lattitude Canada office. So we bring in volunteers from around the world to Canada. So I know there's probably a question from one of you on here about the Canada program because you're in the US. So that's something that we can talk about maybe offline as well. But that is the reason why the Canada program is not advertised on our website, but we can certainly talk about the opportunities there. Pia knows all about them. Oh, what just happened? Okay. And Ecuador, again, and one of our Latin American placements here where Spanish would be a requirement. We will sort of, you'll be assessed a little bit on your Spanish skills. But if I could speak from experience, if any of you are thinking about learning a second language, there's no better way to learn it than by going to a country and being immersed in it and having a chance to try it in person. So I've been well in contact actually with one of our volunteers who's just coming back from Argentina. I'm going to meet him next week. And his Spanish went from practically non-existent to us writing all of our emails to each other in Spanish. So it's pretty cool what happens. Ghana. Actually, we just posted some pictures from the Ghana orientation on social media today. We've got some cool opportunities, both country immersion and an action project that we're going to be announcing on our website soon-ish. So some cool opportunities there as well. We've been sending volunteers to Ghana for a long time and some really fascinating opportunities available. Guatemala, this is a newer program, a pilot program. Actually, we just sent our first volunteers there just this January, correct, JALYSSA? Yeah. So some wonderful opportunities to work with the Mayan community in the Lake Atitlan region. And then Japan. Oh, I want to go there. I think our really popular medical placements are in Japan. We have New Zealand. I bet you, Owen, will want to talk about New Zealand, but everybody that I've spoken to has said that who's been to New Zealand says it's their favorite place in the whole world. So is that true, Owen?
Oh yeah, it's beautiful for sure. Really great people, beautiful scenery. Definitely is a beautiful place to go visit for sure. Yeah.
I just thought I'd pick on Owen for a little bit because he actually he went and worked for the Lattitude New Zealand office for a little while. So he just returned not that long ago. And then we've got Poland. What I hear a lot from our volunteers that go to Poland is that it's one of those off the beaten path places in Europe to visit. It's fascinating, got great history, but a chance to get a really unique European experience, and then having the rest of Europe just at your doorstep. And everybody who goes to our European placements tends to see the whole continent over the course of their experience. Same thing with Spain here. Oh, Spain is probably one of my favorite countries in the whole world that I've ever been to. Again, really, really fascinating. A lot of these countries as well, you have that chance to stay with a host family and get a real immersive experience, and Spain and Poland are on that list. The UK, oh boy, land of Harry Potter and Shakespeare, right, and Beatles. But it's also just got such great history. It's where Lattitude began as well. So it's a really near and dear place in all of our hearts. And just some great opportunities all over the place there. And the US, so we actually another pilot program in the US as well that we've just launched ahead. I'm not sure actually, maybe my team can help me when our first volunteers are going there, but it's a new offering as well. All right, and Vietnam, finally on over in Asia, another opportunity for a language coach program as well. Beautiful. All right, actually I think that's JALYSSA's favorite place, isn't it? Yeah. And Project Europe. So we're just talking very quickly about the action projects. So Project Europe, I mentioned the 4 countries that we're sending to this year. We're just sort of working on the combination of countries for next year, and what the exact details will be. But it's a chance to see more than one place. So if you are eager to explore different work types in different countries while in placement, that's the way to do it. And then Greece, it's so great. We've got a couple of you on board here that are interested in the Greece program, or maybe you've already signed up. It's just a wonderful place, and being on one of the islands there and having a chance to work with animals there. It's a new program that we're super excited to share with Canadian volunteers. All right. So let's talk about the work types quickly. So we have 6 main work types when it comes to our country immersion programs. So we'll talk about them a little bit as we move through the presentation. And then we'll talk about the action projects shortly thereafter. So we have the school assistant placement. As you can see, it's available in a variety of countries. The school assistant placement is a great option for you if you'd like to have an experience working in a school, but you don't want to do any teaching. Your role is to be a trusted mentor and to help in a variety of things, such as volunteers are often asked to help with the boarding house if it is a boarding school. Not all schools we send to are boarding schools, but that can often happen. You may be helping with sports or fine arts, school trips, extracurriculars. Could be a number of different things that you get involved in. The placements that we have, as you can see, some nice longer options as well here. That allows you to sort of be at a school for an entire academic year with some breaks as well for travel, or maybe be there for half a school year as well. But it's really a great way to get to know students and make a real difference there. Oh, I believe I've spotted the first typo. This is a new presentation. UK should say 11 to 12 months, I believe. Outdoor camp assistant here. This is a chance to go and work as a camp counselor and enjoy camp life, to really awaken a spirit for adventure. And that's for you, but also for the kids that you work with in a camp setting. You're there to mentor them. Don't worry if you don't have any prior experience doing instruction and outdoor skills. If this photo here of these rock climbers is a little intimidating, don't worry. When you arrive on placement, you actually get a lot of training, and that can last for a couple weeks. I've heard some volunteers say their training was well over a month. It really depends on the camp and you know, what's required. Actually, Pia, can I put you on the spot about training that's done in the Canadian camps?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's you are trained to become a full camp counselor, and that's pretty intense those first few days at camp, because you can't keep it as a theory for too long. You have to just go into working, but it goes all the safety that goes into it, the hard skills, you know, how to do the high ropes and the canoeing, and then it's all the group activities, the games, all the songs. And yeah, it's it's very fun and intense, I would say, that first training week. And the training keeps on going after that. You have certificates for each thing that you're going to be leading. You know, whether you're the canoe instructor or the high ropes instructor, then you will be certified for that. So that's what the hosts really put into you, that you are learning a lot of new skills.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, and the same is, you know, this is what happens in the Canadian camps, but it's the same sort of standards in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK as well. And those credentials are transferable as well. So if you'd like to gain those credentials for yourself, this is a wonderful way of doing it, because you get to be in another country while you're at it. Pretty awesome. We have what we call language coach experiences. So this is a chance for you to share your language in a conversational manner. There's a variety of opportunities around the world for doing this. Yeah, it's basically their chance to share, have a chance to practice conversational English with the native speaker. So you might be, you know, in the classroom when there's another teacher involved, or there may be sort of another way of doing that. Katrina, could I ask you to talk about your experience with your placement type doing the language coaching?
Yeah, for sure. So I was at a post-secondary institute, actually. I guess it's the equivalent of like our colleges. It was actually kind of strange, because I was teaching people older than me, but also more comfort zone. Really good experience, in my opinion. So throughout the week, I was responsible for, I think, four like conversational English classes. So then I would do that during the day, and then outside of that, I was paired with a girl from Australia as well. So that was really cool to make a friend on the literal other side of the world. So collectively, we taught separate classes, but we did come together to run a co-curricular like English Corners Club at least once a week, where people who weren't necessarily in our classes could come and practice speaking, learn about other cultures. It was just kind of a good time to like hang out, and then we had the opportunity to learn about the school and about the city. Depending on where you are, if you're interested in doing the language coach placement, some teachers will get you like super involved in like their other classes, so you might come in and help their classes, or a lot of the teachers had kids that they wanted to learn, learn English from native English speakers. So we also did end up tutoring some of the teachers' children. So like the youngest, I think, was 2, And then we went up to 12, and then the teachers are like, wait, you're teaching my kids English, you could teach me English. So like it's a really dynamic kind of situation, and like by absolutely no means do you have to say yes to anything you don't want to. You could take that time for yourself to lesson plan or travel or whatever you want. There is no judgment on how you wish to spend your time, but I just thought that was kind of a cool experience to try with like varying age levels, varying understanding.
And how was it to go and be sort of like a language teacher without prior experience? I am assuming you didn't have prior teaching experience. Was that?
No. It was very interesting. I've been a camp counselor most of like from when I was 13 to like when I left. I still counsel at camp now, so I guess that never leaves you. It was interesting. Like you guys were talking about your like orientation, like both in Canada, but then like in your placement country. When I first got to China, we spent a week actually orienting on like both culturally the differences and trying to beat jet lag. But they spent a lot of time also going through with us like how you structure a lesson plan, what happens if it doesn't work and you need to improvise, or like what is in a good lesson plan, specifically for conversational English, because a lot of people would get hung up on the grammar of it, and that's not really relevant. And then I don't know where you guys send volunteers for this, but I know my cousin, she went to Vietnam and she was working with like elementary school kids. So the whole age range varies, and you don't have to be with post-secondary kids. That's fine too. I almost find that the orientation they give is more geared towards elementary school kids. So you'll definitely be well prepped for that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. On the subject of teaching, if you want to try your hand at a bit of everything, you can be a teaching volunteer. So this is where you have the opportunity to volunteer with a teaching role. So you could be working in an under-resourced school, a developing country, and you'll be asked to eventually teach a variety of subjects. Again, of course, you're going to have mentorship and support in getting there. So what I have heard from a lot of return volunteers is they didn't get necessarily tossed in the deep end immediately. It was a slow immersion into that process. But in my opinion, as a teacher myself, there's no greater way to learn how to be a teacher than to go and try it out. And also it's a really wonderful way to just understand what the power of education even is by working in another country. And it'll give you a really great perspective if you're considering being a teacher in Canada or the US. Having that global experience will really, really help you out. Community volunteer, as you can see, we've got this experience available in a lot of different countries. I would say that the term that we use, community volunteer, is a really massive umbrella term for a variety of different things. But really it's, when we say care to make a difference, we mean that you're working with an organization or a group that's there to help people live with dignity. You're there to help people that have a disadvantage of some sort. And so that might be working with people with special needs, the elderly, or a variety of other sort of challenges or disadvantages. So a wide variety of opportunities right around the world. Yeah, it's some really awesome, meaningful experiences. And the medical assistant, so if you're thinking of a healthcare career, this is a great way to learn. Again, no experience necessary at all. You're there to sort of learn from medical professionals in Ghana or Japan. You may be sort of working with the Red Cross hospitals in Japan or with primary caregivers in Ghana. And it's just sort of seeing it in action and being there available to help out with whatever the doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals are asking of you. But I've definitely heard of volunteers observing some really cool things, being involved in all the different wards of a hospital, being there right in the ER, being there when a baby is born, being there to observe a surgery, whatever it is that's going on that day. Volunteers can often get right in there and ask questions. And again, because our hosts are so invested in your learning, they're happy to be there and talk you through things and answer your questions. All right, and then action projects. So we talked about it being, you know, a little bit different from the country immersion experiences. The Project Europe program is over 5 months, and it's a different experience in a range of countries. We're finalizing the plans for 2020. Stay tuned. Unless, you know, any of my team knows anything that I don't. And then we have the Greece and Ghana action project. So Greece is up on our website. There's you can volunteer anywhere from 2 to 12 weeks. And the focus there is either on the animal welfare with shelter animals or working in marine conservation, or you could possibly even combine the two things together in your own sort of package. And then we have the Ghana action project, which we are just sort of working out the details of and we'll be announcing soon. But that's looking like a 6-week program over the summer and working in schools as well and helping with reading practice. So this is the idea with these action projects, is to give you sort of a more flexible or shorter term option that maybe does fit into a summer or wherever you can fit it in if you're not able to do a longer term experience. All right, as for the Lattitude journey, there's a few different steps. I am just conscious of time, so I'm going to try to get through it thoroughly without racing through it too much, but somewhat just to be respectful of your time and be able allow us to take some questions as well. So it all begins with the application. It's online. I will be emailing you with a special coupon code that you can use for your online application, so stay tuned for that. But it's really quite an easy application. We just want to know some basics about you. Don't worry if you're not 100% sure what your first choice is. Just put in, you know, what you think your first choice is. You could put your first, second, and third choice on there. We ask for your references, and then our system will go and contact those references right away for you to, so that we can hear all the wonderful things that they have to say about you. And then of course your application fee, which will be, if you use our coupon code, it will be 50% off. We, you know, again with the application, we just want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. Don't be stressed out about the process, and you know, just be yourself in the way you write about who you are. We will contact you then for your interview. Again, don't be nervous about the interview. We just want to get to know you. It's a 2-step process. First with, like I mentioned, possibly your volunteer coordinator or otherwise a Lattitude staff member who may be local to you. And then with the country manager of where you're likely going. And it's really so that we can make that match to the right placement for you, and that you become the right volunteer for that placement as well. And then following the interview, we will be giving you an offer, and you'll accept the offer, and you'll start to prepare yourself for the journey. So that includes being assigned a Lattitude volunteer coordinator. We talked about some of those pre-trip preparations. They'll be your point person to help you with all of those things, such as booking your flights, your insurance, visas, all that kind of really important stuff that you need to do before you travel for a long period of time, and all the documentation that you need, and opportunities to socialize with other volunteers, get to know everybody, and feel confident about the journey ahead. And then you're off. Yeah, you get to, we won't help you pack your bags, but that's probably the most exciting part of it. But we will help you with, you know, kind of getting ready for the journey. And we will give you some ideas of what to pack, but you're putting it in your own bags. If we can, we will, we do sort of connect you with one of our humanitarian travel agent, and they are often able to do a little bit of coordination of flights for volunteers depending on your region, and if we can. But either way, that's a chance for you to start to meet volunteers from other countries once you arrive to your destination for your at your orientation. And then when you're on placement, you'll have a mentor on hand at the placement and receive on-the-job training when you arrive. And this one, just to point out again, no expectation that you know everything. You'll learn it as you go. Training will be provided, but otherwise there'll probably be a little bit of needing to just step out of your comfort zone and try stuff out. Of course, you've got 24/7 access to us, whether through your country manager or in the case of an emergency through our emergency line. And that program manager will come and visit you on placement as well. Just a few photos to share with you, just so you can see what that orientation might look like. So here's some of the group shots of volunteers having a blast when they first arrive in country. Lots of new photos have been posted on our social media channels recently, so come check it out if you want to see photos from Australia, for example, or Ghana. That's a chest. Go and see those. Here's some samples as well of what you might expect of accommodation. We talked about how accommodation is provided by your host, and it can really vary from living in a boarding house at the school that you're working at, if you're at a boarding school. So that looks to me like what we're seeing in the UK photos there. You could be sharing an apartment with other volunteers, or you could be with a host family. There's a variety of different arrangements that might be given to you for your accommodation, but that will be provided. So we just wanted you to get a few visuals on what you might expect of where you'll live over the course of your placement. And then next steps. So we talked about applying online. Our deadline is at the end of the month, which is why we wanted to make sure that we met as many of you this month as we could. So this is if you're interested in any of our placements in roughly the next academic year. So anything sort of from this coming summer of 2020 into early 2021. If you've got questions about if you should be applying now, feel free to ask us about that. But what we mean by a priority application deadline is that you have your biggest chance of getting your first choice by applying by this date. And then you'll have ample time as well to prepare for the experience as well. And then, of course, we'll set up your interviews and your video chats, help prepare you, get you going to those pre-departures, and you go get those suitcases packed and ready to go on the adventure of a lifetime. Money, we should talk about how much it costs. So we talked about the application fee. It is $100, but we are giving you a little $50 coupon. So I'll send that to you by email. So that will be paid with your application. After you have gone through the interview process and we've presented you an offer, that's when we ask for the deposit, which is $1,000. So before we ask you for this deposit, you've had the entire interview process and have had a chance to really understand more about Lattitude and where you'd be going. And then the balance is $29.45, which will be due 3 months before departure. We also have an orientation fee of $650. This is across all of our country immersion programs. As we talked about, the orientation, there's a lot of value in there, and in terms of what you do to get oriented to the city, to the country that you're going to be in, some sightseeing, lots of meals, accommodation, all that. That's part of that. Your airport pickup, and any coursework. So if there's a teaching skills course or language courses and that sort of thing, that's part of that as well. And then we have Project Europe. The program fee is a little bit different. We're not going to detail all our action project fees. Like we don't have the Ghana fees ready for you, for example. So I'll just quickly show you for Project Europe. Again, it's also the application fee that you can use the coupon for. The deposit is the same, $1,000 after you have gone through the whole interview process with us. And then the balance is $40.45. And then the orientation fee as well of $650. I apologize, I'm racing through this, but I'm just conscious of the clock, and just want to be able to move into questions with all of you here that's been waiting patiently and listening to me blabber on for the last hour. The Greece Action Project as well. So the structure for the Greece Action Project is a little bit different from our country immersion programs. So it begins again with the application fee. Again, you can use your coupon for that. And then we have an $800 booking fee, which is due on acceptance. And then the weekly fee really depends on how long you go and where you're going. So if you are going for the animal welfare program, it starts at $650, and that will be the cost for a 2-week experience. And then beyond that, there's a weekly fee of $255. So if you wanted to go for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks, you sort of, it's added up in increments. There's a really detailed chart with all the math done for you on our website. So if you can take a look at that, and of course ask us for clarity as well. And then the Marine Conservation Program is a 2-week option. So you know, it isn't done by week, but it's that $755 there. But it certainly is possible to, you know, combine, and if you want to do a couple weeks there and a couple weeks at the animal welfare as well. Like I mentioned, we don't have a chart for the Ghana Action Project, but that will be up on our website soon, so stay tuned. Other things to budget for as well includes your visa. So this is the document you need to apply for. Not every country requires one, but many of them do. Your volunteer coordinator will give you the guidance on how to apply and whatnot, but it's something to budget for. Flights and insurance. We do work with a humanitarian travel partner, and as a volunteer, you do qualify to travel as a humanitarian, and you get a great rate, as well as they're able to provide a lot of other value for the flights, and do try to coordinate with other volunteers if possible. And then immunizations, if required. It's not required for everywhere you travel to, but there are some places that there will be. For example, the yellow fever shot might be something that you need to get if you're going to Ghana, for example. And then spending money, we want you to go and do some fun stuff on your weekends and your time off, and you know, other sort of incidentals. In developed countries, you will often get a stipend to help to offset the costs of those activities as well. And that amount does vary, but it's often around $100 a week, Canadian dollars, that is. But there's a variation to that as well. We'll move into questions shortly. Just wanted to highlight our social media channels and our website and our email. This is a great way to get in touch with us. So Lattitude Canada is our handle on both Facebook and Instagram. And we've got a hashtag. So if you want to get a really authentic experience and see what volunteers are posting and what all of our regional offices around the world are posting, then you want to follow our hashtag as well as our actual pages. But we've got loads of info on our website, but we've got the whole team on this chat. So why don't we take a break from me talking, and let's hear from you. If you've got any questions, just feel free to unmute your mic and ask a question. If you have to zip off because it's already just past 5 o'clock here, well, Pacific anyway, we understand, but and you can always reach out by email, but we're happy to take your questions right now. Maybe I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see all of you. All right. Anybody want to ask a question at all? I've unmuted all of you. Again, it's just no questions, really.
Maybe a stupid question. All amounts are Canadian dollars, right?
Yes, yes, that's not a stupid question. Yeah, it's just our website's a little bit Canada centric, so yes.
What were the options in Ghana again in terms of volunteering? Was it working in the medical community?
Yeah, Owen,
Right.
you want to talk about Ghana a little bit?
Yeah, there's 3 main options. There's the teaching option, which isn't English teaching. It's sort of general teaching of all subjects. A lot of the teaching is done to younger kids. So if you've graduated grade 12, you know, you'll be able to teach, you know, the basic maths and sciences and things that they'll ask. The medical placement is at a rural health clinics. So they're not at big hospitals. It's not like a hospital in Canada. Like,
Oh, sorry.
oh, okay. And so yeah, you're working kind of at a rural health clinic with medical professionals, but it's a bit more hands-on opportunity than if you were to go to Japan, and you're more observing things in Japan. And in Ghana, you're like handing out medication, weighing babies, helping with admin work, and maybe helping in the lab.
Oh,
And the other, so that's the medical placement, and then the community placement is actually a really cool placement. It's the Football for Hope placement. And back in 2010, FIFA had the World Cup in South Africa, and there were a number of these Football for Hope centers that were built in different countries throughout Africa, and so Ghana was one of them. And it's a school for sort of underprivileged kids, you know, poor communities, for them to sort of get drawn into school and participate in school with the sort of the lure or the draw of football. And so you kind of use the coaching with soccer as a way to get kids in. And then there's a lot of sort of just life skills, teaching opportunities. They've got a computer lab. The pitch that they built is like it's a really nice pitch as well. So it's a pretty cool opportunity actually. But those are the three main ones in Ghana. And the action project, the 6 week action project, I don't know if it'll apply to the Football for Hope, but it's essentially just a shortened version of the 5.5 month placements in Ghana. So
Right.
most often you'd be teaching for 6 weeks, but I don't believe you'd be doing a Football for Hope for 6 weeks.
So it's usually 6 weeks or 5.5 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. Some people will go for a full year, like they'll go for like back-to-back placements. We often tell people to go to Ghana first and make that decision whether you want to stay for an extra term once you're there. Not because it's not great. In fact, it's, you know, it's a fantastic placement. But I think people, you know, when you start daydreaming about what it's going to be like, going for a year can be a big chunk to chew off. And so I think people often, when they go, if they make that decision a couple months in, when they've realized, you know, what the placements are about and the reality of it, I think that's the best time for them to make a decision. And we have a number of people that decide to extend after they've been in country because, you know, they've got a handle on it.
Right.
I'd say Ghana is probably our most challenging placement, but it's definitely one of our most rewarding placements that we've got. It's really for people that are able to put themselves out there and are willing to kind of roll with some ambiguity that can happen in Ghana. It's a fantastic country, but you know, you definitely have to be a bit of a self-starter and somebody that can kind of take the lead and the initiative on some things. But so we're one of our best placements by far.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I apologize. I ended up muting all of you again just because there was a bit of background noise. So just feel free to unmute yourself if you want to chime in. Also, if you don't feel like speaking up, you can always type your question. Yeah. Angie, did you have a question?
Yeah. About the flights. So the flights, we have to get that, right? Latitude doesn't. But you mentioned about how like you're involved with this program to get flights. So how does that work?
Yep. JALYSSA, do you want to talk about flights?
Sure. So the way we're partnered with a company called Raptim, or Key Travel is kind of what they've turned to. And they're out of BC, and they're a company that we've worked with. They're a humanitarian company, so they're really great to work with. You'll probably be in contact with a girl named Jen Kirkland, and she's wonderful because she gets back to you and she gives you different options for flights as well as insurance. And then once you have the option, like you don't have to pick to go with them; it's your choice. So if you want to do, if you do want to look into those flights, you can get a quote for them. And then what they tend to do is they try and pair people together on a flight. So we just had a bunch of people fly out of Vancouver, BC to get to Vietnam, for example. So they tried to put everybody on the same flight so all the volunteers could get together ahead of time. And then with that, depending on the airline that you fly with, they can give you a humanitarian rate as well. So then we provide you with a letter that says you're doing humanitarian work abroad, which gives you a much cheaper rate, allows you to have cancellation last minute sort of thing as well, or switch your flights for a minimal cost. That's why we've chosen to go with Raptim. They've been a very good company for us to partner with. So that's typically how it works. And we would get to that in the process of you applying, like that's kind of something that we do later on. Like we'll work on getting your passport, your medical form, things like that. And then when it gets a bit closer to the time, then we'll send out the opportunity for you to get your flights and insurance. And then it's up to you to decide who you'd like to go with. If you choose to go with other people outside or another company outside, like if your parents are a travel agent or you have somebody already in mind, you're more than welcome to do that as well. We just have you sign a waiver is for your insurance if you choose to go with somebody else. But other than that, they're wonderful to work with, which is why we've had them as a part of our team for a while. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Any other questions at all? If not, I could probably ask a bunch of stuff to Katrina because I don't feel like you've had enough time to talk. Anything else from the crowd here?
There is one in the chat.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. So do you have available placements that would work if you only took one semester off of post-secondary? And yeah, we certainly do. So we talked about sort of the action projects. A lot of those are quite flexible. But we do have some of the other programs that work. I think a lot of the ones certainly that depart in the January, February time of year can often fit nicely into taking your second semester off of post-secondary. And then, it might go a little bit into the summer months as well, but you'd be back for your next September start. So there's quite a few different options if that's something that is important, is having that timeline to fit. Yeah, we can work with you on what those options are. The brochure that I'll be sending off to you has a very detailed placement chart that outlines sort of which countries, how long the placements are for each country option as well, and when the approximate departure date is, so that you can kind of look at what might fit your schedule, but we're happy to talk you through what those options would be. Thanks for the question. Anybody else?
I'll add on to that, ZAHIDA, about if sometimes people are afraid to necessarily take a year off of school, and I understand like taking off a semester, which works, but with a project like Greece, even something like that, you could do over your summertime, because our summer in this side of the world, it tends to be June, July, August, right? So you could easily do a placement for 2 to 12 months in Greece and then still be back in time to go off to post-secondary in September, if that's something you're thinking too. So that's why it's good to check out online, and it might not be like a semester, but it could be the summertime that you could find a placement that works with your schedule too. Although I know you might want to work and get some money to raise for this too, but yeah, it's just another option.
And yeah, and then the Ghana Action Project as well that we'll be announcing soon. It's looking to be a July departure for about 6 weeks, so that would still get you back on time for a September start at school. Great. Awesome. Any other questions?
Hey, it just occurred to me. Is there a way to get in touch with the host families or the place that will be hosting our children, and talk to them prior to I don't know, going or as a selection?
Oh, sorry, I was just lots of waving. Oh, they're leaving. Oh, darn, I misinterpreted. Yes, that is certainly something. It's closer to the departure. Volunteers do get information on their host family, so there can be is contact information shared in advance? Can you talk about that, either JALYSSA or OWEN?
Yeah, it's shared in advance, and oftentimes the host families are connected in some way to the placement. Not always, but mostly it'll be like a teacher or a headmaster at a school will be the host family. So the placement matching comes first, and then once we know kind of the area that you're in, the host family comes a bit later. Every country is a bit different. In Ghana, the host family matching, you don't find out who the host is probably until about a month before you go, and that's just the way it is in Ghana. That's just the kind of basically the way it is. Other places you find it a bit more ahead of time, but again, the hosts are all connected to the school too. So, but we give you the contact information, and we encourage volunteers actually to introduce themselves and just say, hey, I'm excited to come, looking forward to meeting you, and then starting a dialogue that way. So yeah, that's it from my perspective, but I don't know if JALYSSA, you want to add anything to that?
It's basically the same thing. It tends to be more last minute than what people would prefer. And the reason for that as well, like last minute meaning a month or so before. And the reason for that is because a lot of the families won't match with another volunteer until their current volunteer is gone. So a lot of our families cycle through volunteers, which is pretty cool. Spain, for example, one of our countries that we're with, they always have host families and they love having volunteers. So they're often very busy and they'll take them for one semester or one session, like whether it's 3 to 6 months in Spain. So then they won't necessarily commit until after the volunteer's time is done. So some of the time it can be last minute because maybe the family's going away on holidays, or maybe they're exhausted from this round and they want a break for their kids or something like that. But that's why we tend to find out a bit later for some of the countries, especially Europe actually as well. I know Poland as well, the families can kind of commit a bit later in the process than what volunteers like. But yeah, we totally encourage you to get out there and introduce yourself. And even if you're the type, if to like bring a little gift for the family, or if you're because the host families tend to have kids, so if you're going over and you want to spend some time with the family, it's kind of nice to bring some maple syrup or something from from your region. It's kind of fun, and then the families appreciate that too. So yeah.
Great. And just a quick follow-up. So what's the motivation for the host families? Why are they doing it? They're not part of the organization, are they?
No, and they actually don't get paid any money either. So they're doing it because they're genuinely wanting. Usually, it's because they want somebody. In the case of Spain or Poland, that's English speaking, that can encourage their kids to speak a bit of English to teach them. And it's also a bit of a in Ghana, especially, I can speak to that. It's a bit of a prestige thing. We've got a volunteer from overseas staying with us, and because they are connected with the school or the placement, oftentimes they're working at a school where they're getting a volunteer, and so it's kind of part of the whole process. So that's also a really important sort of distinction that I'd like to make clear, is that we don't pay the host family, so they're not seeing volunteers arriving as just dollar signs or a bit of a cash cow. They're actually bringing people in because they want them there, and they want to have some sort of exchange of learning, culture, language, that sort of thing. It's a genuine desire for people to be there, and not just a money grab. And when you introduce money into it that way, I think it's people are bringing volunteers in for the wrong reason, and that sort of interaction can suffer a bit. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
One quick one. I don't know. I hope this can be answered quickly. You mentioned that Ghana would be one of the more challenging locations. How would you compare that to Guatemala or Vietnam? I know they're very different parts of the world, but just the experience.
I guess they're all challenging in their own way. I think all three countries you can get by speaking English, and you'll be okay. It's not like Ecuador where you really need to know how to speak Spanish. I can just speak to Ghana. I can't really compare it to Guatemala because that's more of JALYSSA's wheelhouse. But yeah, I think the other thing with Ghana is that there's just culturally the lifestyle is a bit more laid back and relaxed. So people coming into Ghana and expecting to get things done right away, or having a schedule and sticking to it, like it's just not gonna be that by the book. You got to be a bit flexible and easygoing about things.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, right. I mean, but it depends on the kind of person you are too, right? So if you're somebody that gets stressed out because you don't know what your schedule's like, 4 weeks from now, it's going to be difficult for you. But yeah, that's kind of what I mean when I say it's quite challenging, but also quite rewarding. And then JALYSSA, I don't know. I'll pass over to you for the Vietnam, Guatemala bit.
The whole scheduling thing is interesting because Vietnam, you're living in Hanoi is where you would be for the placement. So you're in the northern part of the country and you'd be teaching. So that's the one program we have in Vietnam is teaching English or being the language coach. And you're living in an accommodation, like you're in the city, right? And they tend to be more scheduled. They're very advanced there in the sense that you will have a schedule from when you get there in the morning to your expectations of what you're teaching to when your day is over and what you choose to do in your spare time. So it is a bit more organized, I'd say, than Ghana would be. And and the environment is very different as well. But Southeast Asia is phenomenal. It's a very popular location to go to Vietnam as well. Plus, then you can, it's very easy to do your own traveling if you do have a travel bug in the family, and and you want to do some extra traveling. It's cheap and easy to kind of travel throughout the rest of Southeast Asia if you want to go to Cambodia or Thailand in your spare time. But that would be what I'd say about Vietnam. And then Guatemala, like ZAHIDA mentioned, is a pilot project, so we've just started that one up. I would say it's raw, like in the sense that it is around Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, and there's a bunch of different placements that are positioned around this lake, and it could be from working in like a coffee plantation to helping out in a cafe with people with disabilities, and depending on what you want to do, you can be placed in different spots. Like we've got one boy from Vancouver there right now working at like a permaculture property where he's learning about organic farming, and he's really loving that environment. But it's not remote, but it's very different in the sense that he had to take a boat to get to because it's on a lake. And so if you want to get around to different spots on the lake, there's this boat that comes around to different docks every 10 minutes throughout the day, and you can hop on and go visit the other volunteers at other locations. But it's just it's not like hopping on, what's it called? The tube in UK and scooting around, the city. It's a bit more raw that way, which is why I think that's a bit different from Guatemala too, or Ghana as well. But each country's got a bit of its own spark to it, which is fun.
Interesting. Thank you. Question?
Okay.
Great. Well, we're happy to take any final questions, but I also know you probably want to get on with your evenings.
I have a question. So for Project Europe, what kind of projects do you do through all these countries, like in examples?
So I can talk about Project Europe. For you'd start in Poland, so that's where your first project would be. In Poland, you would be teaching or being a language coach, so you'd be teaching English while you're there. And that would be about 2 weeks, I believe the placement is. And this does change because it is a project that we are modifying as we go, as we hear back from volunteers. But that's what you do in Poland. And then you go to Germany, where you kind of do some environmental work. It's more of a labor project where you're outside doing more environmental work. So there is an opportunity. They've built a dock on a lake, and they've built tree houses, because it's almost in like a camp for kids sort of thing. So you're kind of developing things there and helping build. So it's more laborious. And then you go to the UK, where you work with adults with disabilities. We've got 3 different locations throughout the UK that you can be paired with, and you it's more of the community work where you work with these people. And that tends to be the one that we get most reviews from, that people love that opportunity in the UK. And then you end in Spain, and it's in 2 parts right now. So right now, you get to spend a few weeks with just a host family. All you do is exist with a host family and kind of like learn about what it's like to be a part of a Spanish family. And then for the last bit while you're there, you get to work at a kids camp as of right now, and you help run activities and things like that. But that's just the projects that we have for March 2020. Once we get feedback from those volunteers, then it might change a little bit based on the timeline of everything. But that's the projects that we have for now. Mm-hmm.
And I know there's been talk next year, it might be, Greece might be part of it as well. Just we're still working out the details for 2020. So another reason to stay informed on our website and our social channels and all that. Well, if there's no further questions, feel free to interject, but otherwise I will be reaching out to all of you by email. If I got your email addresses in advance, to send along that coupon code and brochures and make sure you've got important links and whatnot. But we just want to thank you so much for joining us from all these different corners of this continent. That's so wonderful. This is a bit of an experiment for us to do an online session like this. And so thank you so much for your great questions and everything. So feel free to reach out at any time you've got questions, and remember to apply by the end of the month. But if there's any further